Ladies, gentlemen, and barbarians of all ages, we're on the cusp of the release of the newest bit of actual content into Diablo 4, patch 1.3.3, and its main feature, the Gauntlet. Over time, we have slowly learned more and more about this entire section of the game being added in, this whole new mechanic, and so in preparation for its arrival soon, we're going to talk about my preliminary Gauntlet build for Barbarian, which is based mostly around speed of movement, and also killing with a bit of boss burst capability too, just because bosses can show up anywhere in the Gauntlet, and the tankiness is more than enough for the shown difficulty level of the Gauntlet we've seen so far, as the nightmares that I'm doing for footage are 15 levels above the expected tier of Gauntlet combat already, and I'm still doing just fine survival-wise. But the goal here is to have an extremely high damage charge with a nearly non-existent cooldown for excessive speed, with the result being that you can just charge through the whole place non-stop. But then we have the addition of a reasonable amount of extra power being granted to Hammer of the Ancients, so we can charge and charge and charge until we find a particularly bulky enemy that we can then HotA down quite easily, use it to buff up our Wrath of the Berserker as well, then continue charging around with even more bonus damage. With that in mind then, let's go over where we put all of our skill points in the build, our technique slot of choice, our uniques and legendaries to make this function properly, as well as the general stats and affixes that you want to aim for on gear. Then we have the construct set up as well as the Paragon board layout too, followed finally by just a bit of how to play with my time playing the build up until this point. Without further ado then, this build does not actually use a basic skill, so your first 2 points are just spent anywhere to unlock core skills. They don't really matter. Then you want to stick the first full 5 ranks into Hammer of the Ancients. Extra ranks from gloves is ideal as well, and we also take Enhanced Hammer of the Ancients for bonus damage while using it, as well as Furious Hammer of the Ancients for bonus damage depending on your current Fury number when pressing it. Not percentage of Fury, but the raw flat number itself, which is why maximum Fury bonuses do affect the damage here. Then we move on to the defensive cluster, and we're going to be grabbing Rallying Cry, as well as its enhancement, and also Tactical Rallying Cry, altogether giving you a chunk of Fury, as well as significantly increased Fury generation and movement speed for a number of seconds after activating, also affecting nearby allies. We also then take Challenging Shout, its enhancement, and Tactical Challenging Shout for a defensive cooldown that taunts nearby enemies, as well as reducing their damage done significantly for a few seconds, and giving us bonus maximum life, and also some bonus Fury when taking damage. Outside of that, we grab 3 ranks of Imposing Presence as a passive for a bunch of bonus maximum life, and then 1 rank of Outburst for some thorns, mostly as a gateway, to 1 rank of Tough as Nails, which basically, to sort of sum it up, acts as just a way of making any enemy that hits us start bleeding instantly, activating a number of our synergies and our different affixes for free. After that, we're going to be moving on to the Brawling skill tree over here, and we're going to take Warcry, of course, as well as its enhancement, and Power Warcry for a short duration damage boost that is stronger when surrounded by 6 or more enemies, that also gives us a few seconds of berserking after activating. Then we're also going to be grabbing the full 5 ranks of Charge over here, as this is going to be one of our main damage skills, of course, and we also, of course, grab the enhancement for more damage when hitting enemies into walls, and Power Charge for significant cooldown reduction, with a current build setup using this to have a non-existent cooldown on charge as long as you hit 3 enemies or more every time. And with the full Shaco version, you can even get it to the point that even just hitting 1 enemy, if it's a boss, does a full reset of charge instantly, allowing you to literally only use charge in every scenario if you want to, which is awesome. Then we of course take some passives here, 3 ranks of Booming Voice just for extra duration on each of our shouts. They are very potent buffs, so having them active longer is quite nice. Then 2 ranks of Aggressive Resistance for some damage reduction while berserking, as well as 3 ranks of Battle Fervor, which is important for allowing us to basically just stay berserking permanently, giving us 3 seconds of berserking anytime we use a brawling skill, which of course includes charge, which we are spamming all the time. Then in the next cluster, we are just going to be taking passives, 3 ranks of Pit Fighter over here for some bonus damage against close enemies and extra damage reduction from distant enemies, 1 rank of Thick Skin for some Fortify gain when you actually get hit, and then 3 ranks of Counter Offensive for a damage bonus well above 50% of your life as Fortify. Then in our ultimate skill cluster, we of course are going to be taking Wrath of the Berserker, as well as both of its enhancements, giving you Berserk and Unstoppable for 5 seconds after casting, as well as a Fury generation bonus. Casting a basic skill reapplies Berserking during the 10-second duration of the skill itself, and also any Fury spent increases the Berserking damage bonus during this window, with 200 Fury spent leading to a 100% damage bonus while Berserking is active, which stacks beautifully with many of our other multipliers and synergies in the build. And the beauty of this is that the snapshotting rules of the game do apply to this skill, meaning once you use Wrath of the Berserker, you get to actually keep your Fury spent damage bonus until you lose Berserking. So as long as you keep your Berserking buff active, you will not lose the bonus damage, letting us have this at 100% uptime, simply because of our ability to reapply Berserking every time we use charge. Then we have our passives in this cluster too, of course, 3 ranks of Heavy Handed for bonus crit damage when using 2-handed weapons, 3 ranks of Brute Force for bonus multiplicative overpowered damage when using 2-handed weapons, and then 3 ranks of Wallop for bonus bludgeoning weapon damage to vulnerable vulnerable enemies. Then finally in our key passive, we are of course going to be going with Unconstrained for this build to increase the berserking damage bonus, mostly because Unbridled Rage only affects core skills, which means it doesn't affect charge, so this simply works better with our goals in the build. With that then, let's go over our technique slot. We apply bleed through our passives and through a unique that we'll talk about in a moment, so the one that is most worth having in this slot is the two-handed axe expertise for bonus damage against vulnerable enemies just constantly. After that, we're going to be talking about our uniques of choice, and there are only two really required to make this one work well, the first of which is the Ring of the Ravenous, which applies Ren stacks on enemies hit by charge, but actually more importantly for us in this specific build, gives us ranks of charge, which lowers the cooldown of charge and helps towards our permanent charging goals. But the damage this gives on top of that isn't bad at all either, even if you aren't focused around bleed damage. Then we're also going to be taking Tybalt's Will for our pants slot. You don't technically need these to make the build work, but they pair just so well with it that it's hard not to actually say that you probably should have these. When you use charge, you get a momentary burst of Unstoppable, which makes this work uniquely well with Tybalt's Will, as you can trigger both the damage boost and the fury gain every single time you press charge, even if you press it back to back, which lets you very reliably just charge, then HotA any remaining targets, and repeat that loop through an entire dungeon, giving you tons of fury to boost HotA every time you charge, as well as the constant damage bonus that you get just for triggering Unstoppable that frequently. As well, of course, if you had them, Grandfather and Harlequin Crest, both as uber uniques, would be perfect in this build too, with minimal fiddling and changing stuff. It is worth mentioning that. That said, without them, the rest of your legendaries are, starting with the two-handed weapons, Limitless Rage for a bunch of bonus damage whenever you use Hammer of the Ancients. This only really comes in handy for tankier elites or bosses, but we know these will be a frequent part of the Gauntlet more often than not, so this is our way of dealing with them. Then we also have Ancestral Charge on our other two-handed slot for double effectiveness, simply making even the ghosts of our original charge do a large portion of the damage too, making our effective range much larger, which makes us better at clearing out large groups speedier. Then on our Amulet for 50% effectiveness bonus, we have the Earth Striker aspect for a free overpower every 8 times that we swap weapons, and the idea behind this is you have charge tied to either your slashing weapon or your two-handed weapons, whichever has higher item power. Then you charge, use HotA, charge, use HotA, and every 4 cycles of that back and forth, you get a significantly boosted overpower hit on either HotA or charge, probably on HotA if you're fighting a boss, which is just fantastic really. Then for our other offensive aspects, we have Ancestral Force for the Hammer of the Ancients damage and radius increase that gives us, Edge Masters for bonus damage while at high fury, which we constantly are, and Veteran Brawler on our gloves, which just gives you a nice bit of bonus charge damage depending on how many enemies were hit by your last Hammer of the Ancients. Again, working towards our cyclical back and forth gameplay loop between the two skills. Then on our second ring, we have the Bold Chieftains aspect for overall lower shout cooldowns, because we have multiple of them, which will lower each other through this. Then we have the Ghostwalker aspect on our boots for constant bonus movement speed and the ability to walk through enemies permanently active thanks to charge. Then for our defensive slots on the helmet, we have the Numbing Wrath aspect for tons of extra fortified generation. Then on chest, we have Juggernaut for a ton of bonus armor at the cost of our evade cooldown, which doesn't matter to us really at all because we have a no cooldown unstoppable charge that we can use instead. So this just puts us at armor cap for free, essentially. As for the actual stats on your gear, then you want as much cooldown reduction as possible from your amulet and your helm slot specifically. You want brawling skill ranks on your amulet too. You want maximum charge ranks on the unique ring, that's a priority for the stat on that. You want Hammer of the Ancients ranks on your gloves. Then you want overpower damage, strength, all stats, damage while berserking as your main damage stats as well, and then damage reduction from close, from distant, from bleeding while fortified. Those are all generally your best defensive stats. And of course you also want to cover your actual elemental resistances and get them up to their maximum where you can. With that covered then, let's go quickly over your seneschal construct setup, which is quite simply for boosting player power even more. Starting with the Flash of Adrenaline glyph for a player damage buff, duration support, as well as tactical support, which make this buff be permanently active at higher levels, and then Genesis as a unique tuning stone for 150% bonus effectiveness, changing the damage buff from this from 20% up to 50% permanent multiplicative bonus damage on the player, which is of course massive. Then we have Tempest for a quick spreading, fast firing ranged attack, Fortify support for loads of fortified generation when this attacks frequently, efficiency support for extra crit chance against multiple enemies, mostly against bosses and bigger elites really, but this helps regardless. Then we have Evernight for 4 bonus ranks to every skill for 2 seconds after the attack happens, and it happens once every 1 second, so this is permanently active as a buff as well, essentially just a mini Shaco in itself. And with that then, let's have a look at our Paragon board setup. From the starting board, you want to head up the right side through the damage increase rare node, wrapping around through the middle to actually grab the glyph socket itself, inside of which you want to put the Brawler glyph. This needs level 15 to fully activate in this specific location, but it is the ideal slot for it as we mop up the rest of the rare nodes on this board, including extra physical damage, which is boosted by the Brawler glyph itself. This also boosts brawling skill damage a fair amount once activated fully. Get the same spread that I have here, you want to head up and left at the top side of the board here and attach the Bonebreaker board with the legendary node in the bottom left, like so. You want to head directly to this legendary node, taking no detours at all, just heading through the strength nodes for the most optimum route possible. Then once you get to the legendary node, this simply gives you a guaranteed free overpower once every 12 seconds, no strings attached. After that, you want to head up through the rare node, which gives you damage reduction while fortified, and sort of just diagonally through the middle of the board, grabbing even more rare and magic nodes for bonus damage while fortified, as well as bonus damage while healthy. Then you want to use this to wrap around to the glyph socket itself, where you're going to be sticking in the exploit glyph for bonus damage against vulnerable targets, as well as making any enemy vulnerable for 3 seconds the first time you hit them, once every 20 seconds. Then you want to grab the rare and magic nodes of note here before wrapping out to get to the right side of the board and the right side board exit first, where we're going to be attaching the Decimator board with the legendary power on the right and the glyph socket on the left. Head to the glyph socket itself then as quickly as you can, and you want to attach in the Dominate glyph for bonus overpower damage, as well as a free guaranteed overpower once every 30 seconds if you've not overpowered before that, which is basically just the start of a fight more often than not. It's the general overpower damage increase that you want to use this for realistically, because again, that is plus 234%. That is quite a lot of bonus damage. After that, you want to grab the rare mode up here for damage reduction from all enemies, as well as the willpower up here and the remaining willpower in here to actually activate the glyph itself, which you can get quite a bit of bonus power on. Then you head out the right side to get to the legendary node here, which gives you 10% bonus multiplicative damage overall for 5 seconds after making an enemy vulnerable, just anytime you do that, as well as overpowering a vulnerable enemy grants an additional 10% multiplicative bonus for 5 seconds. This tracks separately and it's stacked, so you do want to do this quite frequently. After that, we go back to the previous board and head out the top side, this time quite simply, and here we're attaching on the Carnage board with the glyph socket on the bottom side and the middle. You want to head up to that glyph socket pretty much as quickly as you can, because this is our most important glyph here. It's Ire, which gives you a bonus damage while berserking, quite a bit of it, as well as an additional bonus of reduced damage from elites while berserking too. You want to grab the rare and magic nodes in here, as well as all of the strength required to actually just over-activate this. You don't just want to activate this, you want to pump it up, as damage with berserking is one of our best, if not just our best stats in general. After that, you want to head out the right side here and then also up to go into the corner, grabbing the legendary node along the way, which gives you bonus attack speed for critical strikes you get while berserking. Then you also get the damage while berserking rare and magic nodes up in the corner here, before heading out the right side of the board and attaching on the Warbringer board with the glyph socket in the top left. You want to head basically directly to this glyph socket, grabbing all the extra strength, and in here you want to put the Crusher glyph for bonus damage while wielding maces, as well as the additional bonus, which is a 30% increased damage multiplier on any overpower hits that you get, which is in itself quite massive. You want to grab the rare node over here for bonus resistance to all elements, as well as the extra damage with maces that this gives us because of the strength that it has on it, really just helping us fill out the radius more than anything. And then you want to go back to the Carnage board and head out the left side, making sure to grab the damage while berserking rare and magic nodes on the bottom track. Go at the left side of the board, and here we attach our final board, which is going to be Blood Rage, with the glyph socket in the top right. You want to head to this glyph socket, stopping to grab the rare and magic nodes here for damage against bleeding enemies, and in the glyph socket you want to stick in the Martial glyph, our final one, which grants a bonus to all magic nodes within range, which is pretty nice in itself, and also gives every non-shout skill 4 seconds of cooldown reduction whenever you use a shout. This is excellent for us. It includes charge if you don't hit 3 or more enemies, or our ultimate as well if you just want to lower the cooldown on that if you manage to not get a perfect berserking cycle. Then you want to head out the left side of this area and down to the legendary node itself, which is 10% chance for bleeding enemy death to grant berserking for 5 seconds, and also increases your general damage just permanently by 25% of your damage while berserking bonus. So right now, with the amount of damage while berserking that I have, I get a 74% increased multiplier on all of my damage permanently, just because of the stat that I already wanted anyways, because it was already really good. So this just lets us double dip extremely well into this stat. And then finally, with your last few points, you want to wrap around here and get the damage while berserking rare and magic nodes in the bottom left corner, as many as you can with your remaining points, just sort of rounding this out to be an extremely potent and powerful build. And that just does it about as far as putting the build together then. So how about actually playing it? Well, this one is relatively simple. Your shouts, of course, have their own utility. Rallying Cry pairs well with Wrath of the Berserker to let you spend loads of fury on Hammer of the Ancients and get your damage buff quickly within the window. Challenging Shout is a great defensive cooldown in its own right, and Warcry gives you a burst of bonus damage for quite a bit, but they also all act independently as separate resets for your charge cooldown if you mess it up and hit less than 3 enemies. They act as sort of get out of jail free cards for your charge cooldown, allowing a 4-second reset for each one that you use, and this means that you can sort of use them and cycle them for either purpose as necessary to keep your speed at maximum and your brain power required to actually use it it as low as possible as well. Then you have Wrath of the Berserker, which we mentioned earlier can keep the actual damage bonus from active 100% of the time, then otherwise it's just charge for movement and lower burst of damage. Hammer of the Ancients occasionally for the bonuses that it gives our charge, and also for tankier enemies to take them down in a jiffy because it hits like an absolute truck. And then that's it, everyone, pretty much. A barb build made just for the speed farming of the Gauntlet activity coming up extremely soon. I hope you've enjoyed watching the fastest barb build in the West, and hopefully you enjoy using it for yourself too if you give it a try. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.